Thank you for your attendance tonight at this wonderful event, Avenue to Awareness. Tonight we'll go on a journey with a group of amazing young men and women who will not only share some personal experiences with mental health, but also some important messages around how we can take time to improve our own mental well-being. Our next speaker is Brooke, and as you can see, the title of Brooke's presentation is called Seeing Clearly for the First Time. Before you start, Brooke, it is actually Brooke's 18th birthday today. And I'll hand it over to the birthday girl. Buckle up, everyone.
Oh, yeah. I should preface. Oh, God. It's a bit long, got carried away. And they set the bar, well, you guys set the bar really high. I have not memorized this, so don't mind me. I'm definitely reading off the screen. I'm going to make it obvious too. So, I should introduce myself. I'm Brooke. When I was asked to write a speech on mental health in youth, I naturally had a lot of ideas floating around in my head. I could talk to you about sleep deprivation, the effects of social media usage, the importance of your environment, the constant stresses of school. I mean, I've definitely had my fair share of mental health issues over the years. At school, I regularly break down in tears and have certainly been referred to the guidance counsellor multiple times. Back in 2017, I had a really bad panic attack week, and I ran away from home. I got into a stranger's car and I couldn't even remember how to make a text box in PowerPoint because my memory was so just bad, but look how far I've come. My doctor gave me a questionnaire and he told me, Brooke, you have chronic depression. And, where am I up to? He referred me on to some specialists, but I forgot to follow up, and I quickly forgot that I had chronic depression. He referred me on to, no, I'm not up to that. It was only 2 months ago that another doctor gave me anti-anxiety medication, but I also forgot to take it until my mum found a box of tablets in the cupboard and asked me why there were only 2 tablets missing if I had been given them a month ago. So, where did all this internal conflict come from? This is where Since before high school, I can remember being creative, academically motivated. I loved school. I was always participating in classroom discussions, enthusiastically completing the tasks given to me. I do remember needing a bit of assistance keeping on track, but to me or my teachers, it was never a big issue. And that's normal, right, to stare out the window and daydream or become preoccupied with my raises or what the person next to me was doing. My parents were receiving report cards that was saying I had excellent behaviour and I was highly enthusiastic. I was what teachers would call a delight to teach and a student who had potential. Things were going really well until they weren't. When I entered high school, my issues with time management and my inability to focus started interfering with my life. Wait, that is the wrong slide. Oh, there it is. In year 9, I was already... Oh no, I'm prepared, can you tell? In year 9, I was already incredibly behind on every assignment given to me, staying up very late into the night, and sometimes, I'm really sorry, Mum, but I wouldn't sleep at all, and my parents wouldn't know about that because I'd be locked in my room and I'd do assignments all-nighters, don't recommend. Throughout year 9 to year 12, I can't remember a time I wasn't doing an assignment minutes before it was due, and had large chunks to do minutes before it was due, and I rarely, or if ever, completed assignments or anything given to me, even exams. I was always that kid scribbling at the very last minute, and then when it's finished, I'd still be scribbling, and I'd be like, Brooke, stop, that's the end of the exam. I was trying though. I was still trying to focus during class and get things done. I would compromise my social life. Sometimes I'd give up lunch breaks. I went through this phase where I just was in the library every lunch break. I would compromise spending time with friends on the weekends. I would make lists and time schedules and purchase really elaborate diaries just to get things on track. And if you know me, I love stationery and just things that are meant to help you organise. Get organised. And I bought a diary for $90 from KKK, and this is why my bank account is just not looking good. And I couldn't work out why other people didn't need to meditate every morning or read self-help books all the time to function. And I just felt like I was putting so much effort into life, but it felt like I was in reverse. And so the more revs I put into my engine, the further back I would get. It felt like my potential was up here, and I was all the way down here. And as time goes on and as time goes out, i.e. the end of my high school career, which is ultimately where you wanted to get a good OP and do well, that ladder that I needed to climb to reach my potential was getting shorter and shorter. Inevitably, this caused a lot of stress, and I have struggled immensely with what seemed like anxiety and depression to teachers and doctors. The people around me, like my teachers, friends and parents, were saying as nicely as they could, and I thanked them for saying it as nicely as they could, that it was ultimately my own doing. I had wasted so much time, I didn't prioritise the right things, I procrastinated. I had potential to do well, so ultimately it was my fault. I created an identity for myself on this vicious cycle of trying to get things done but never being able to finish them on time. I had no idea what I was doing with my life besides listening and watching and reading things on self-help, and they didn't seem to be helping. And there was so much shame. Every time I got a report card, it would say the same thing. Brooke needs to work on her time management. Brooke needs to put in more effort. The issue to solving my problems was that I just needed to listen in class and do what was required of me. I needed to stop overcomplicating everything and just get in and get it done. Ultimately, however, I knew that it was my behaviour that had made me feel this way. And behaviour is affected by the brain. And my brain, I didn't really know what was going on with my brain. So I decided to finally go and get help. I actually got help because I'd made the internal decision to go and get help a while ago. And this year I had the phone number for a psychiatrist for a month, but actually calling up the psychiatrist, making an appointment, and not cancelling it because, like I had in the past, because I thought I just do a better to-do list and follow it, it'll be all right. It really took courage for me to actually go get the help I needed. I was so scared that he was going to tell me that everything was in my head and that my identity is someone who procrastinated, or as others would put it, oh no, don't look at me, teachers. I just looked at my teachers. Oh. Sorry, I like crying a lot of speeches. Damn it. I was scared that image of someone who procrastinated, or as others put it, was lazy, was a true reflection of myself. It says change PowerPoint. Oh, that's a report card if you want to have a look. So, 2 weeks ago, I was sitting across from my psychiatrist that my doctor had referred me to after having been so fed up with not knowing and not being able to deal with what was going on in my head. I walked into his office and he sat me down and he asked me, "So Brooke, what is it that I can help you with today?" I'm not sure. No, I'm not going to skip it. It was an open-ended question, and naturally I didn't know where to start. I started talking to him about how it all started in grade 7, about how I think I had depression because I had these things where I'd self-harm and occasionally resurface over the years, and sometimes I went through these manic episodes of being really depressed or really excited and anxious. And there was that time in grade 10 where I was so stressed and out of my mind I ran away. Oh, and did I mention that procrastination ruins my life? My psychiatrist tried to have me focus on one particular topic. He kept asking me to go back to what we were talking about, and there were multiple times in the conversation where I would stare at him blankly and say, what were we talking talking about? And after a few more questions and talking to my parents, he finally told me, Brooke, I believe you have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also known as ADHD, sorry. A moment of silence passed, during which my mind had completely disregarded what he had said because I was preoccupied with the painting on his wall. And then I looked at him and remembered where I was, and I was like, oh, really? Whoa. Okay, I'm not sure if I'm surprised. But it was like, finally, I had answers. And the prospect of getting the help I needed, it was like that feeling you get when, like the morning of Christmas, when you're a kid and you're going to open all these great presents. When I went home that day, a lot of emotions and thoughts went through my head, which isn't unusual for me. At first, I was so happy for finally getting an answer. And after years of struggling to remain focused when people were talking to me, or always doing an assignment at the absolute last minute possible, I could finally get the help I needed. But after that wave of happiness subsided, I began to feel confused and angry. How could no one have picked it up? How could my teachers and my family have seen me struggle for years and think that it was a simple issue of time management? But I realised, how can anyone help you realise you have ADHD if they don't even know what to look out for or even know that it could exist? When I was writing this speech, I did a lot of research, probably too much because I got carried away and wasn't actually writing the speech. It was so obvious to me looking at my everyday life that I had ADHD. I just didn't know it at the time. And honestly, when I told a lot of people, like my teachers and family members, some were surprised. Society has created this idea that ADHD is reserved for the young boy who can't sit still in class and is constantly out of his seat and interrupting people during conversation or getting absolutely no work done. And that's true. He might absolutely have ADHD, but ADHD shows itself differently in girls and boys. And that is a generalised statement, but it's true, and a lot of girls go undiagnosed. If you're not familiar with ADHD, it has 3 primary characteristics: inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. Some people with ADHD have a presentation of both inattention and hyperactivity, which is the most common form of ADHD. Others have a more hyperactive presentation, and some have an inattentive presentation. Those are the daydreamers and the space cadets, although I might have the combination, but it doesn't really matter. When I looked at my life, I knew that it was ultimately my behaviour that had caused me so much grief. And behaviour is affected by the brain, and my brain has ADHD. Understanding the brain you're working with is really important. And that's true if you're a teacher, if you're someone's friend, if they're your boss, they're your colleague, or most importantly, if it's your own. ADHD affects between 5 and 8% of the global population, which means statistically speaking, 80 kids have it at Toulouse State High School, 120 kids have it at Gladstone State High School, but the rates of actual ADHD diagnosis is not that number, and that needs to change. I was going to say that there was like 8 people in this room. I think my math is really off. Chances are you've already met someone with ADHD, and at some point you're going to ask yourself, what is going on in their brain? What can I tell you? First of all, it's not bad parenting or lack of discipline. ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder where parts of an ADHD brain develop more slowly than in neurotypical brains. It's currently the most well-researched mental condition, and there are measurable differences in the brain. These differences are larger in children, but for most people they never go away, which means that adults have ADHD as well. This is where my PowerPoint ends, because clearly I don't have good time management, so sorry. Statistics are showing that ADHD diagnoses are increasing. And no, that's not because this generation of parents tend to not spank their children anymore. It's because understanding of ADHD from a scientific point of view is increasing. This means that girls, adults, and gifted students can have it as well. Nevertheless, the general population still have a really large misunderstanding of it. And I'm guilty of this. When my mum told me over a year ago that she thinks I could have ADHD, I screwed up my nose, got highly offended, and told her ADHD is for people who can't sit still and can never focus. And sometimes I can sit still, and sometimes I can focus. Not all the time, but don't worry, Mum. I just need to buy this really good notepad I saw online, and then it will be alright. But when I was diagnosed, I started thinking about how many times it was obvious I was struggling. Now I'm going to tell you a story, and my dear teacher, Miss Nickel, had to deal with me on this day. So we were in Japan. On a school trip, and we had a shopping day, and so our group was walking to the mall area. So we were walking, and I was looking around, and I was like, where are we? And I was like, oh, we've been here a few times, Brooke. Like, don't you recognise where you are? And I was like, no, I don't. But that's all right, because I won't get lost. I have Emily with me. But that was the worst pairing ever, because later that day, I lost my phone in Japan, where you can't really read the signs. I didn't have a SIM card either. I couldn't really call it with. Wait, it doesn't make sense. But anyway, I didn't have my phone. So turns out it was in a stationery shop where I was getting more things to get organised. I went back and I was sitting there. Luckily, like, Japan's really safe, so it didn't get stolen. It was just sitting there in the books, and yeah, it was. I'm happy it was there. Like, that's your phone, and you're in Japan. So anyway, later we were sitting at lunch, and my friend was like, "Where's my shopping bag?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know." Are you asking me? Like, I don't know anything. And she's like, "Oh, I've lost it." And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, whatever. Like, we'll go find it. We'll trace back our steps." So we had been to the same stationery shop. It had like the same logo on the front. So I also had bought stuff from that stationery shop, and we went to all the shops around. And we're like, like, have you seen a bag that looks like this? And I was holding it up to the shopkeepers. At some point throughout the day with Emily, I got lost. This is a fun time for my teachers. And I was actually lost for what they said was 5 hours, but I didn't know I was lost for 5 hours. I was like, it was like obviously 5 hours into getting lost. So I was like, oh, I should email a teacher. It felt like I'd only been lost for like an hour. And I learned that this is because people with ADHD brains have a really skewed sense of time. Eventually my dear old teacher found me, and well, the point of this story is that, I got found, that's okay, like, I'm safe. But turns out that the bag that I got lost looking for, I was holding it up the whole time. Saying, have you seen this bag? Oh, it is a bag, don't worry. While ADHD can give you some funny and wild stories to tell, it also translates to real life dangers, like people getting into more car accidents, a significant increase in struggling with drug addiction, being more likely to get fired and divorced. Just ask my mum how many times I've left the straightener on, or the iron on, or the heater on, and then left home without knowing, and sprinting to the bus stop, because I'm sprinting to the bus stop every single day of my life. And the bus driver, he knows this, so he usually keeps an eye out for me to see if it's really bad. I've learnt a lot of other things too, like ADHD is on a spectrum. Raise your hand if you've ever lost your phone or wallet or zoned out during a speech. And if you're not raising your hand, I'm assuming you zoned out during this one. The thing is, well, everyone experiences ADHD symptoms sometimes, An actual diagnosis is based on how many of those symptoms significantly and chronically impair multiple aspects of your life. Just like you can get anxious and not have anxiety, or get sad and not have depression, you can get distracted and not have ADHD. And just like you can have mild to severe anxiety or depression, you can also have mild to severe ADHD. And on the note of losing phones, I actually lost my phone yesterday, and I got it back like 8:30 this morning. So I lose my phone all the time. One of the more interesting things I learned is, where I'm up to, is that ADHD is different in girls compared to boys, and this can often result in it being overlooked. While boys may be getting in trouble a lot at school and work, girls have more difficulty in social relationships and at home. Boys are usually more physically aggressive, like kicking, punching, and hitting, and girls are usually more verbally aggressive. Boys often interrupt others while talking. Girls tend to space out while other people are talking. Boys externalize their frustrations, and girls tend to turn pain and anger inwards. It's only been 2 weeks, but learning that I have ADHD and not a simple procrastination issue has been a rewarding journey. I can work towards getting the help I need. I can learn about strategies for someone with an ADHD brain, not strategies found in self-help books designed for people with neurotypical brains. But we need to strive to educate not just those affected by ADHD, but the people surrounding us. That means teachers, parents, and friends. ADHD is real, and it won't get any easier dealing with it if we do not have the support around us to help us cope with something that is ultimately trying to divert our attention every chance it can. A lot of people struggling with ADHD can describe their brain as a TV where someone else has the remote. Sometimes we can get stuck on a channel and can't pull ourselves away, which may look like I would rather watch videos about Taylor Swift, and sometimes that certainly is the case. But the truth is, there are plenty of times I really want to focus, but I just can't. Current understanding has to do with the ways our brains produce and metabolize neurotransmitters like responsible for hormones like dopamine and norepinephrine. That's not right, but anyway. Thankfully, ADHD is highly treatable. Medications prove to be highly effective for 80% of people and help because they stimulate these neurotransmitters in our brain to produce enough dopamine that a normal person receives when they complete everyday tasks. But it isn't enough. ADHD affects executive functions like planning, prioritizing, and our ability to sustain efforts towards a goal. It affects our ability to regulate our emotions, our behavior, and our sleep. It's not the one part of our brain that works differently, it's the whole part that works differently. Not one button on the TV remote, but all of them. And there are a lot of strategies that can help us. Therapy, meditation, regular exercise, having someone keep you accountable. I also learned that getting overwhelmed all the time had to do with poor working memory, and that making lists help. And that's also the reason if you introduce yourself with your name, like everyone does, I'll probably forget it. Please don't get offended. It's the reason why I was running late. It's the reason I'm always running late and always struggling to hand in assignments. And it's not because I'm lazy, it's because I have a trouble understanding the concept of time, and that using a timer can teach me how long things actually take. I've been feeling really bad my whole high school career as to why I couldn't get assignments done until the very last second. But learning I have ADHD means I can stop comparing myself to people with the neurotypical brains and identify with people who also struggle like me. I can see the benefits to ADHD and stop staring at the negatives like I have been for years. Scientists hypothesize that ADHD, which uses prominently the inattentive type of attention, was likely beneficial when humans were evolving. It's likely that the involuntary attention was adaptive during human evolution because it helped your ability to notice slight movements in the brush, hear a trickle of water far away, or see a herd of prey galloping over the distance, and then you quickly go and you get distracted, and it helps you become like eating food instead of becoming it. However, in the modern age, where we don't have to hunt for our food, a brain that uses inattentive attention over active attention is not beneficial. That's not to say that ADHD doesn't have its benefits. People with ADHD tend to be kind, creative, and funny. Or if you're like me, where people laugh at how awkward I am and just laugh at me instead of with me. And we not only think outside the box, we don't even know there is a box. The constant movement of our mind and the constant inflow of ideas means that we're excellent at coming up with innovative ideas. And the sheer number of thoughts is astounding. Even if a lot are bad, they are great jumping off points for deeper thinking. One distraction can end up in an unending train of thought fueled by intrigue for the next thing. It's like microwave popcorn where one kernel goes off and then they all go off. ADHD can really, really suck. But we quickly get distracted. And it's important to know that if you do have ADHD, you're not weird and you're not stupid. You don't need to try harder, you just need better coping mechanisms. You're not a failed version of normal. If you don't have ADHD, chances are you know somebody who does. They're your employees, your boss, your friend. They're in this room. I hope that together we can work towards a world with more compassion for people with ADHD and not only help them understand how to survive, but to also thrive. Thanks.